market share right now on these platforms like Spotify, and I'm not worried about it right now.
Yeah, right.
Personally,
right now, exactly.
yeah.
So, but the thing is,
6 months from now, yes.
Who knows? Yeah, because the incentives, the sort of the business incentives to me seem more aligned with AI than for the platforms and supporting human made music, right? Because AI is
Correct.
basically instantaneous and free. And if it keeps
Yep.
people on the platform, that's really what Spotify wants. I mean, can you imagine any kind of other kinds of reverse incentives to bring the platforms back to actual like human musicians?
Well, I think it's just going to force musicians to be more creative in their presentation, their live presentations, or online videos. You know, having YouTube channels or TikTok or Instagram, things like that, and creating a connection with their audience in addition to their music, is that they're forced to put the face to the music even, put their face to the music even more.
Yeah. But like you said, you can't go see Lyra Vega live. You
Yet.
know, we've only got 2 minutes left, Rick, and I'm suddenly seized by, even though I see the potential of AI, I'm also seized by this like fit of nostalgia. So I want to play something here that involves one human. This is 1982. Michael Jackson sang his own background vocals in one of the best-selling albums of all time. Here's what that sounded like, the background vocals, the construction of it, track by track. Della, 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 here tonight. 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 Okay, so this is from Robert Komanecki. He's a professor at the University of British Columbia School of Music. And he did use AI to actually separate out those tracks, we should say. But bring it together and you get this. Here tonight. Still one of the greatest songs of all time. What makes that great, Rick?
It's human. I mean, it's incredible. It's so well done. All those harmony parts, they're so well thought of and so well executed. Michael Jackson had incredibly good pitch and just an amazing singer. And just the tuning of that, this is before auto-tune, is so precise. It's really remarkable.
And I just hope that we get to a point where we still honor that as a human-generated masterwork and can live with that alongside of whatever AI is going to do in the future to creativity and the business of making music. So with that, Rick Beato, musician, engineer, and YouTuber, thank you so much for joining us, Rick. I really love talking to you.
Thanks, Megan. Really appreciate it.
And folks, Rick is at Rick Beato on YouTube. Check him out. I'm Meghna Chakrabarty. This is On Point.
On Point is a production of WBUR Boston and is distributed by APM, American Public Media.
Support for On Point comes from BetterHelp, committed to supporting mental health through therapy. Clients are matched with one of 30,000 therapists and can communicate via video, chat, or phone at betterhelp.com/public. And Seed. Seed's DSO1 is a 24-strain 2-in-1 probiotic and prebiotic engineered to survive digestion, support healthy regularity, and promote whole body health. Learn more at seed.com/public.
Overcast and 68 degrees. This is KUOW FM Seattle, KUOW Tumwater, and KQOW Bellingham. It's almost noon, almost time for Week in Review, and here is host Bill Radke to give you a preview of today's show.
And I had to say to my guest, give me a second here on the microphone, because we're talking so excitedly. We're sitting here and we're getting ready to do the show. We're going to talk which way Seattle, which way King County, what do voters want, what might they get. President Trump says the National Guard in LA and DC is not the end. He called out several cities. What could that mean for another city not on his list, but who Trump has said is controlled by radical left Democrats? Could we be next? You're going to hear SPD officers explaining what they were doing and not doing in DC on January 6th, and we'll clear out a zone at the end of the show to tell you what made us smile. So stay tuned.
All eyes are on Texas as Republicans work to draw new congressional districts ahead of 2026.
But the battle for control of Congress runs through Southwest Washington, home to one of the most competitive districts in the country.
And that's where incumbent Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez has a new challenger. He's the Republican leader in the state Senate.
Meet John Braun, a moderate who could deliver the 3rd district to the GOP this week on Sound Politics, wherever you get your podcasts.
Support for KUOW comes from Blessed Sacrament Seattle, presenting Naomi Bernstein on the Ruth and Paul Mons organ, Sunday, August 17th at 7:30 p.m. Details and tickets at blessed-sacrament.org/concerts.
Catch all the local newscasts in a new place, your podcast feed. Listen to KUOW Newscast, updated every hour with new headlines. Find it in the KUOW app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Last week on Today Explained, we talked about the push to go to Mars. But this week, we're going to talk about living on Mars, settling Mars, colonizing Mars. Some people think it's essential for our survival. Others say it's the dumbest idea in history. You can listen and decide for yourself.
Today Explained later today at 6 p.m. on 94.9 KUOW Seattle. Increasing chance of rain this afternoon and breezy as well, with gusts up to 25 miles per hour. High expected to be 70 at 67 now at 12:01.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin have just arrived in Anchorage, Alaska for their summit. Trump, whose plane landed minutes earlier, had previously said the meeting would be one-on-one. But CNN is reporting Trump's brought his 2 top advisors on Russia, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. It's unclear whether a portion of today's summit will still be just Trump and Putin. Trump has described today's meeting as a prelude to a second, more crucial one involving a ceasefire deal between Russia and Ukraine. From Moscow, NPR's Charles Maines reports Putin has framed today's summit more as economic diplomacy.
In advance of the summit, he thanked Trump for what Putin called sincere efforts to negotiate a peace in Ukraine and suggested they use the Alaska summit to also engage in nuclear arms talks. In addition, Kremlin officials have suggested the U.S. could reap huge profits from economic deals with Russia in the Arctic and elsewhere. Those offers come as Trump has resurfaced threats to impose sanctions and tariffs on Russia should Putin fail to sign on to a ceasefire deal in Ukraine. Yet, at least publicly, Putin has shown little sign of compromise. Charles Maines, NPR News, Moscow.
The District of Columbia is now suing to end the federal takeover of the Metropolitan D.C. Police Department. The local government of the nation's capital filed its lawsuit in court today, hours after the Trump administration widened its intervention in the city's law enforcement by naming a federal official as the emergency head of a department currently led by Police Chief Pamela Smith. D.C. Attorney General Brian Schwab said U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi's actions were unlawful. Earlier this week, Trump said he was putting D.C. law enforcement under federal oversight because of a surge in crime in the city. Religious leaders in Washington, D.C. are expressing worry about the administration's takeover. NPR's Jason DeRose reports the clergy say the president's language is inaccurate and dehumanizing.
In a joint statement, Jewish, Episcopalian, Methodist, Presbyterian, and Lutheran leaders in D.C. write the president's actions actions increase the risk of, quote, indiscriminate arrests and the use of excessive force. They say while the White House sees a lawless wasteland, they see fellow human beings, each made in the image of God. The clergy write that everyone deserves to live in safety, but they argue that goal cannot be achieved through what they call political theater and military force. They call on civic leaders to reject governing out of fear and rather work together in the spirit of dignity and respect. The Trump administration's police takeover comes as crime in D.C. is near a 30-year low. Jason DeRose, NPR News.
U.S. stocks are mixed this hour, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average now up 68 points at 44,979. The S&P is down 15 points and the Nasdaq has now fallen nearly 100 points. You're listening to NPR News.
This is KUOW News. I'm Noelle Gasca in Seattle. Heavy rain could complicate efforts to clean up a diesel spill in Bellingham. Construction equipment spewed an estimated 600 gallons of diesel into Padden Creek. The construction aimed to make the creek more salmon-friendly by improving culverts beneath a bike trail. But the spill has already killed at least 5 salmon and trout. Cleanup crews are setting up pumps to keep rainwater from filling the spill site and carrying polluted soil downstream. Officials say there's no evidence that diesel has reached Bellingham Bay. The Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife has issued a stop work order on the construction until polluted soil is safely removed. Costco has confirmed it's not going to sell one of 2 drugs used for medication abortions. Very few retail pharmacies actually sell mifepristone because of complicated regulatory requirements that don't exist for any other medication. But OBGYN Dr. Sarah Prager at UW Medicine says those regulatory requirements,
they do not serve a medical or a biochemical or a scientific or a safety purpose. They serve zero purpose other than to restrict access to the medication.
Dr. Prager has 3 ways, though, to get mifepristone to her patients. They can come to her office to get it, they can go to some UW Medicine pharmacies to get it, or they can get it via telehealth. And it's a first for the WNBA, and it's happening in Seattle this weekend. The Seattle Storm are going to unveil a statue of local sports star and League of Hall Famer Sue Bird at Climate Pledge Arena. The Storm announced earlier this summer it would become the first team in WNBA history to erect a statue in honor of one of its players. Sunday's unveiling ceremony begins at 10 in the morning. This is KUOW News.
Support for NPR comes from ARM, committed to delivering innovative, advanced computing designed to enable worldwide companies to unleash the capabilities and experiences of AI. The future of AI is built on ARM. ARM.com.
Okay, welcome to Friday. Welcome to KUOW's Week in Review. I'm Bill Radke. My producer Kevin and I assemble a group, a panel. Each week we discuss what happened this week, especially locally here. We've got Seattle Times editorial writer Josh Farley back with us. Hi, Josh.
Hey, Bill.
Good to have you. We have political analyst, Seattle University lecturer, UW affiliate associate professor, Joni Balter. Welcome back.
Well, happy truly rainy Seattle summer day to all who celebrate.
Yes. August 15th, or as we call it in Seattle, rainy season. Former city council candidate, local transportation advocate, Alex Hudson. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
We're doing the show on YouTube, live streaming it, so you can see us, and we look good. Yeah, we're going to get maybe an inch in Seattle, maybe 3 to 5 on the west slopes of the Cascades in the Olympics in mid-August.
So needed. We got a 8,000 acre or so wildfire burning in the Olympics. It's desperately needed.
Wait, did you hear that? Do you hear a hissing noise? That must be the rain landing at the Bear Gulch fire right now.
Putting it out every
You have better
second.
ears than me.
Yeah, I hope so. Okay, shall we talk about the weekend news? Which Way Seattle. There's a radio show in LA called Which Way LA, and I always like that title. Which Way Seattle, Which Way King County. Voters seem to want change around here, judging from the primary election we just had. This week, more votes were counted, and the lead is widened. Not only did Seattle's mayor lose, but challenger Katie Wilson now has more than 50% of the vote in a field of 8 candidates. I think it's 51%. So, and last I saw, Mayor Harrell had 41.7. That's a difference of about 18,000 votes. Seattle's city council president lost by more than that to a more progressive challenger. Seattle's city attorney did the same. They will go on to the general election. But my question to you is, in this general election, what is at stake here? How would residents, how would people listening to us right now notice the difference in their lives based on who they elect? Anybody got an answer?
Well, what is at stake here in the mayoral and King County elections is the very future of Seattle and King County. You know, a terrific city, a terrific county, if you can afford it. And many people can't. So we are living this election, I don't know if you all agree, but a lot of people do, an election about anger. And so anyone who is anywhere near an incumbent, Bruce Harrell, and even Governor Bob Ferguson, I'd like to add a point about that, are going to be blamed for things that don't work, for people who can't afford a house, for people who are losing a job, or, you know, that kind of thing. I wanted to make a point about how anti-incumbent this state must be, because Governor Bob Ferguson, remember him? He got 56% in his election last November. Now, an Elway poll shows him with 32% approval. That is just astounding. In my view, Bob Ferguson hasn't done anything really good or bad, but he drops 20 points. I think that tells us in some ways that you really do have folks who are just out of sorts about what's going on, and very much Donald Trump and opposition to him is driving much of this.
Yeah, Joni, I completely agree. I think I kind of call it the great orange shadow. It just kind of continues to cast across the blue cities and the blue states. But I think there's a point to be made about non-incumbents, people coming from the outside looking in, youthful energy. Let's not forget that it's not just Trump and his brand of chaos that we're living through in his second term, but also, you know, at the local level, I think there's still a lot of things that people view as existential threats to them. And when you look at the leadership we've had, even Joe Biden, our previous president, the old folks home on Capitol Hill, there's a want for young, you know, a youthful energy, people to come from the outside. And in this latest sort of generation of, you know, of era of political backlash that we're living through, this is just the latest pendulum swing.
Yeah, you know, there's been a lot that's made of this, like, you know, backlash to the backlash or the anger of the electorate. And anger is a reflection of the intensity of the problems that people are facing. And I'm not exactly sure who people are supposed to take that out on, if not our elected officials. And the things that average voters, you know, kind of everyday normal people, are angry about are things that have been boiling and burning for quite some time. And so the idea that people want a refresh on things like, you know, the Times this week had a piece about how you need to make $92,000 a year to afford a one-bedroom apartment in the city of Seattle. That's outrageous. And people want things to be different. They vote for people who promise that they will make something happen. And just like any kind of performance review, if you're not hitting your goals and metrics that you said that you were going to do for people, then then people are going to have feelings about that. And so I think that it is important to talk about the Trump effect and the long orange shadow, which is that's good. But also to remember that these are actually pretty just like everyday stuff for people about what you can afford. Can you send your kid to summer camp or not is very important to people, and where they are voting a lot more than, do I think my president should be meeting with a despot in Alaska or not, for example.
Okay, good. Three good answers to the question, why do you think voters voted the way they did? My question is, what is at stake in the general election? How will the people listening to us, how will their lives change based on who gets elected? So, for example, we just heard about $92,000 to afford a one-bedroom home. Can't afford summer camp. Are you saying that if these challengers, if we replace our mayor and our city attorney, city council president, that you're going to be able to afford summer camp and a one-bedroom home? What is going to change if it's a change election?
Look, Seattle is one of the most expensive cities in the world, and there is deep frustration, as we're all saying here, with the fact that many people are priced out. They don't feel like they can kind of live a real life here. What's at stake and what changes you might see, we do have to look at some of the accomplishments, but then the question to Bruce Harrell as the incumbent was not, what have you done for us lately, which he ran on. It's more, what are you going to do for us next? And I think you'll see that as part of his campaign, but maybe he blew it by not emphasizing that quite enough.
Do for us next. Are we still talking about the price of a bedroom in summer camp, or something else too?
And he sort of has some things to crow about as well, although I don't like crows, so sorry about that. Yeah. But orderly or disorderly city, more graffiti or less, higher crime or less, a well-staffed police department, and a feeling that your communities are safe, that people are downtown, or that people are in their neighborhood business districts. I think that is very much on the ballot, along with all the other things. And it includes the King County Executive's race as well, but to a lesser degree.
Affordability is this race in a nutshell. Affordability, and Katie Wilson has talked so much about it. She presents a vision on this. She has no problems looking for new ways of taxation to pay for services. She really likes tiny homes, and we're going to see how far that strategy can go. And more shelter space. I think she's tapping into the fact that, yes, we're all feeling the pinch. It's the cost of living here is so high, but where that manifests itself in the greatest degree is on homelessness. And people are still, I think, just in disbelief. They're just incredulous that the number of people that are unhoused is going up. And they want that to end. They feel like we are in too prosperous a place, and that we're too smart a place. We got to figure this out. I'm not saying that she has all the answers. I'm not saying that she has the right answers even. I'm critical of some of the proposals that she has.
For example?
No, Greg Colburn, the University of Washington professor that talks a lot about housing and homelessness, he mentions this idea of tiny homes as, okay, great, tool in the toolbox, could help. Why isn't Bruce Harrell doing more of that? She's going to double down on that. How much of a silver bullet is that? It's still a shed. That can people really live in that for 3 to 5 years? I have criticisms with some of those things, but the fact that she's hammered this issue and that it has gotten worse, and we all see it every day throughout King County, through Seattle, is something that it's the issue out again. Trump and homelessness, to me.
Do we see more visible homelessness? Do we see more encampments than we did?
Well, I'll just one quick sentence here. I think that one of the things that Bruce Harrell should get credit for, and probably does get credit for, is reduced visual homelessness. That is something that has transpired in the last 4 years, and I don't think it's that debatable. Now, how do people feel about that now? Like, do they think up against the way the president conducts himself? Does that make you sort of uncomfortable that you liked that it was reduced? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I have spent a lot of time talking to people who are homeless and who live in tiny who live in tiny houses, and I will say it's very easy for people who have been stably housed their whole lives to say, oh, well, I wouldn't want to live in a shed. Well, okay, it beats the street. And it provides stability for people. I've also heard from homeless people that they just, it's not so much about visible homelessness, it's that people no longer use tents. I've had many people who sleep outside tell me that they just got rid of sleeping in tents because it makes you too much of a target. That didn't mean that they got a house. It just meant that they stopped being quite so visible. I think
So
that
they're
being
sleeping, just in the
rougher.
rough, in a green belt, or under a
bridge,
under
in
an
a
awning,
doorway. Yeah, just to draw a little bit less attention to themselves, which is a sad state of affairs. I think that being a big city mayor is like the most thankless and hardest job that there possibly is. You're the highest authority, closest to people, without a huge amount of control over some of the larger macroeconomic factors that like are the preconditions for things like the level of poverty in our nation. And yet you can make key decisions that change things for people. And there's to me, it's a little bit about leadership, vision, and setting. So like a thing I really care about, right? Are the buses on time or not? Are we wasting people's time after we've asked them to do this really pro-social thing? And a mayor can control that. How many, when I take my teenager...
What would a mayor do about the
bus system comes from the county,
everywhere.
though.
Right.
Yeah, but the things that make your buses not on time are actually a city issue, and so that's about
You're talking about construction, or you talking about
intersection block boxing, about right of way and congestion.
Well, that's coordination to me between the two government entities.
Sure, yes, and that's about leadership and what's your priority. If you decide my priority is that I don't want to see a single late bus in the city of Seattle, we can make that happen. We want to say no one is going to die or have any serious fatalities or injuries on our street. We can make that happen. Finland didn't have a single traffic-related fatality all year last year. The economic conditions and social conditions that we live in, it's not the weather. We can change this, and we change it by the priorities that we set and the urgency with which we match people's problems to the solutions.
Can an outsider, non-politician, at least before this election, can Katie Wilson run the city as well, separate from whether you agree with her policies or not? Can an outsider run the city, a big city, as well as a veteran politician, insider?
Well, unless you have really amazing leadership skills, and maybe Katie Wilson does, it's pretty hard to come into a big organization. You know, the number of employees, something like 13,000 employees in the city. Very difficult. This has been done before, if you go to the files here, but it's a huge lift. I am going to go back in time for a second here. So 2 mayors who were reviewed as pretty successful, Seattle Mayor Norm Rice and Seattle Mayor Greg Nichols, both considered successes in their time. Both of them had plenty of experience. Rice had been on the city council for a long time. Greg Nichols had been on the county council and also was an aide to Norm Rice. So these folks came in and they knew the city. It is it's a big lift. Somebody who did accomplish this is back. Charlie Royer, the TV commentator, becomes a mayor. So it's been done, but it's asking a lot of someone who's new. Who would Katie Wilson hire? How would they know the city? It's just it's a big step up.
Yeah,
I don't quite a big one.
Yeah, I agree. I really strongly believe in experience, and I don't think you need to have been a politician to become a successful politician. And how we define success, right? We haven't reelected a mayor in the city of Seattle since 2005 is the last time we gave somebody a second chance. But I do think you need to know a little.
That was Greg Nichols.
Yeah, about how an idea becomes a law. I think there's a lot of ways to gain that knowledge and know-how, and I think that great leaders are able to understand the problems that people need solved, translate that into viable public policy solutions to move the needle, and as you said, Joni, to hire and support the right people and to bring people together to make it happen. I think there's a lot of ways that you can get that kind of experience in leadership.
But that is learning on the job. Right.
Sure, yeah, and I think people learn on any job, especially when as big and complicated as that. Regardless of who wins, like being able to do those things and deliver for people is really critical skill set.
Yeah, I am also kind of skeptical, given that I think we're coming up on. Again, this is shifting back to the federal conversation, but we're going to be coming up on midterms in 2026 under a president where, we're firing air traffic controllers, the people forecasting the weather, etc. We see these stories every day. I feel like I hope, I pray that the Democratic-led comeback on this is a return to effective government in every sense of the word. And I don't know, things like making sure our kids can do basic math, getting a permit at City Hall, building the housing that we desperately need. These are all things we need to show we can be effective at the city level, the state level, and that counters. We need to fight fire with water, not fire with fire. And for me, I think it's challenging coming in from the outside, and that we do need veteran leadership to lead us through a moment where competent leadership, I hope, is going to become critically important for the Democrats to come back.
Mm-hmm. So I have a question about all of this. Have you thought about part of your opening, host Bill, about Donald Trump sending the National Guard into cities? I think we should all ask ourselves right here, right now, who would you want as mayor? And I'm not answering the question, but who would you want as mayor if that happened?
Okay, good question. That's exactly what we're going to talk about in about 1 minute, because we're going to take a short break. In case you haven't been following this, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Seattle would get what DC and LA have gotten. So we'll discuss that when we come right back for more of KUOW's Week in Review. Stay tuned.
Support for KUOW comes from Eco Design and Maintenance, family-owned and specializing in start-to-finish exterior design using materials and methods that help to reduce environmental impact. From landscapes to hardscaping, outdoor spaces designed to be functional and long-lasting. More at eco-seattle.com.
Support for KUOW's car donation program comes from local Kia dealers, offering the Sportage Hybrid, an SUV with a turbocharged hybrid engine producing 232 horsepower. More info at kia.com.
Okay, on KUOW's Week in Review, now I'm wondering if we really finished our discussion of tiny homes just a moment ago, because I'm listening to Alex Hudson here, former city council candidate and transportation advocate, and political analyst Joni Balter, and Seattle Times editorial writer Josh Farley. And in between segments, we're still talking about tiny homes. And my question to you, can we pick that up for a moment? I was asking, well, are you saying that Mayor Harrell wants fewer tiny homes than Katie Wilson does? Or and if so, why? So help listeners understand that. What's the tiny home debate between these two choices in the November election?
I think certainly I think that politicians understand that this is a popular solution that works for people, and I have seen that to be true of both of the candidates. I think it is a question around the prioritization and the urgency.
And just to explain to listeners, this, well, you can explain if you want. Why we should recap why it is that tiny homes, why it's not enough to say, get out of this park, because it's also, then it's a matter of where people are willing to go.
Yeah, because there is no make people go away button. Certainly not one that we want to push.
A tiny home is 4 walls and a lockable door.
Yeah, it's stability. It's the ability to sleep for multiple hours at night knowing that you're not going to be the victim of violence.
Yeah.
So
the
ability to build a life.
Right.
And they're difficult to cite.
They are difficult to cite, but I don't think there's some screaming difference in the value of tiny homes between the two candidates. You can argue prioritization, sure, fine. But I think that, as the King County Regional Homelessness Authority has struggled, so much money has been spent. And so folks are looking for sort of less expensive and more immediate solutions. And tiny homes seem to be in that category. And I think you'll find that both candidates want to increase that while they search for these more longer-term solutions.
Sure.
And if I can expound a little bit, I think that when you look at, say, Girmay Sahalai running for King County Executive.
And he's a current county council member.
True.
Yeah.
So not brand new, certainly. But you hear every tool in the toolbox kind of an approach, including streamlining, permitting, and doing things that open up the ability to build housing. I'm not saying Katie Wilson is not doing that. She is doing that. I'm just hearing more from him on that. And I think that, again, we need every tool we have available if we're again coming back to the subject of affordability and housing, and there are still so many people suffering on the streets. I view this whole thing as a continuum, and to me, we need every possible solution that we can find.
Okay, so this will continue. We'll talk about all these issues between now and November and beyond, and we'll talk about more about the election for King County executive, and we haven't even had a chance to talk about Erica Evans and Ann Davison, city attorney, or Dion Foster and Sarah Nelson. So that and more to be continued on KUOW. A moment ago, you brought up, Joni, the question of the National Guard, right? So in D.C., in fact, right now, federal troops are patrolling the National Mall in neighborhoods across Washington, D.C. The Trump administration now wants to install its own emergency police commissioner over the district. District officials, D.C. officials, this morning asked a court for an emergency order to block that. And meanwhile, what about other largely Democratic cities, blue cities? Well, President Trump says sending troops to Los Angeles and Washington, D.C. is not the end.
You look at Chicago, how bad it is. You look at Los Angeles, how bad it is. We have other cities that are very bad. New York has a problem. And then you have, of course, Baltimore and Oakland. We don't even mention that anymore. They're so far gone. We're not going to let it happen. We're not going to lose our cities over this. And this will go further.
Will not. I listened. He didn't really expound in any useful way on that. He kind of spun off to something else. But we're not going to lose our cities. This will go further. Can you think of any other cities that could make this list?
Well, he sort of hints at what they are. He says in a different quote that I copied and pasted that crime is rampant in our blue run cities. Many cities are blue run. Yeah. And we are not immune to that. We are a West Coast city that the president often rails against. And so it is possible that, as, erratic as this president is, and he's seizing on this topic, and Putin's up there, and crime's over there, and it's dizzying always. But I don't think that we are out of his clutches. And I guess if you're going to relate it to the mayor's race, I wonder how or if Bruce Harrell could or should frame this as a return to the bad old days of lefty cities, defund cities.
What would be a return? What do you mean by a return to the lefty days?
If the mayor wanted to use that as part of a campaign ad to say, I'm more equipped to not attract the wrath of Trump. I'm more equipped.
I don't think there is anything there is no being a good enough little boy or girl in order to get Donald Trump to not do what Donald Trump is going to do. And I think that let us all remember that crime and violent crime in our city is at a 30-year historic low, and that the cities that Donald Trump named are not actually even in the top of where there is the most homicide or violent crime. These are political-based attacks in order to distract from things like his scandals with Jeffrey Epstein.
Absolutely.
And on and on and on. And I don't think that we should, and it terrifies me every time I think about the extreme amount of chilling effect that the threat of this irrational police state, like let's call this what it is. He has instituted a police state in our nation's capital.
Which is completely outrageous.
Yes.
Of course.
It is horrifying and nauseating, and it is actually happening. And I hardly know what to do about it.
Yeah, and the capriciousness of the president, I think, is something we just don't know day to day, right? I was thinking back on this question to June when there were some protests at the federal building, and ICE was, obviously the sort of where protesters were expressing their anger. We see people that have appeared to not have due process rights anymore, and they're being rounded up. The
protesters were blocking the exits with lime bikes and things, trying to keep.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Thank you for the context there, Bill. And this is an agency with an $8 billion or so budget that's about to become $28 billion, I think, a year. I could don't you should fact check me on that to make sure I've got the number perfectly, but it's a lot. So I just sort of feel like we've got how much longer? Every day brings new challenges, and Seattle may find itself in the crosshairs.
When you say chilling effect, Alex, I'm asking all of you, actually. I wonder if this will affect I read in the local news site Publicola that, well, I'll quote Publicola, organizers of a far-right August 30th rally and concert called Revive in 25 will receive approval this week to hold a rally and concert at Cal Anderson Park on Capitol Hill. The event's organizer has promoted it as an explicit provocation to the historically LGBTQ plus neighborhood. I don't know whether that permit has been approved or unofficially approved, but remember there was a rally earlier around they call themselves Mayday USA. They were allowed to rally to much controversy, right? They were allowed in Cal Anderson Park, and police were there and demonstrators were there, and both sides were mad and got pushed around, and police used pepper spray, etc. So do you think that this specter of National Guard, first of all, I'm curious what you even think of the prospect of the city allowing a rally like this in the same spot in Cal Anderson Park. Of course, we have a First Amendment, right? So what do you think of the cities, if they were to decide that? How would you feel about that decision?
I was hoping, because they did mention this in May, that there would be something at the end of the summer. So I was very much hoping that the city would find a way not to put this in the most provocative and antagonistic park that we have. So they do have a First Amendment right to come here and speak and rally and do all that, and so do the folks who oppose them. I guess I'm for a two-state solution on this, where one group is in one section as much as possible and the other group is in the other section as much as possible.
How possible is that? Can the city just say, yeah, you can have
permits?
Permits
can be quite specific.
Yeah, could they say you can have this end of the park, and we're not going to allow anybody in the middle of the park, and then protesters, you can have the other end of the park? Is that a First Amendment violation to keep people in certain sections?
Well, permits for sort of locating, if this even works. You'd want to, maybe you give different permits for different parks or across the street or something, and of course there's going to be mingling and commingling. That's the point of the opposition, right? Mm-hmm. So of course there's going to be that, but the city has to allow it, I guess, but they don't necessarily, in my view, they don't necessarily have to say that particular park, and I kind of wish they wouldn't. I just think what Seattle should do, if the whole city is so very much opposed to the president, the thing to do is don't give that dog a bone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but that could be the chilling effect you refer to. I don't know, Alex.
Yeah, I spoke to people. It's sad. This is the topic that was what we discussed the last time I was on the show. So here we are again. And I did reach out to people at City Council and confirmed they have been trying very hard to find a solution that respects people's right to
Absolutely.
free speech, even if we find that speech to be dehumanizing and antithetical to your values, or even just, you don't prefer it. And that acknowledges that LGBTQ people and the city's historical queer neighborhood deserve a right to be able to enjoy their park without being intimidated or harassed by people who wish that they would wish ill on them. And their hands are really tied here. And so I think that if people want to support the queer people that they are or that they love in our in our city, then you should find ways to donate to some of those organizations that have lost massive amounts of federal funding. You should find ways to support people's needs in an important way. And we can show up and be joyful and celebrate the fact that who people are, that everyone is welcome in our city. So I would ask people not to stay home, but also to remember that what we're fighting hate with joy. Like you said, you don't fight fire with fire, you fight fire with water. And so what does that look like for us? And like I said, I don't know, all they need is one picture in order, or one they don't even have to have it be true to justify an overreaction, and that shouldn't stop the people of Seattle from standing up for their
So if
values.
the police tell you to move, move. Don't throw something at the police. Don't throw something at the ralliers. Is that what you're saying?
I guess that what I'm saying is that it's really important that we stand up for what we believe, and that we even and especially when it's hard. But that I think that the way that I'm going to be doing that is by.
Will you be there?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, it's my neighborhood, and I'm sick and tired of these people coming into my neighborhood and harassing and threatening my neighbors and the people that I love.
Is their rally Is it harassment and intimidation for them to, Jesus loves you and music and
that's not their message, Bill.
But
they're ostensibly it's their message.
But whatever there's only two sexes or whatever they're going to say. Is that by itself intimidation and harassment?
I don't believe so.
I don't believe so. I think that I don't actually know that I'm qualified to answer that question because I'm not a queer or trans person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that we live in a society where it's very clear that those people are under attack, and that their right to exist freely and wholly is deeply questioned right now. And so I think that everybody has every right to feel that this is causing harm to them, and the city the government does have to allow and facilitate people's right to free speech and expression. I will say, to your point about counterpressing, you don't need a permit to protest. Let's be clear about that. And so oh, you're over here and we're over there kind of thing, that really does open the city up to some pretty significant First Amendment lawsuits.
So the city can't keep those two groups separate. They can't. I mean, don't police already do that? They sort of say, move back, move back.
Yeah, you can try to do all kinds of things.
Anything to add? Do we cover it for now? This is in a couple of weeks, August 30th. It sounds like this is going to happen somewhere, and it might be Cal Anderson.
I just hope the Seattleites who attend, or people from all over the state for that matter who attend, just make your points, but make them peacefully.
Yeah, amen.
Well, I mean, there's a grand history in this country of not being peaceful because you're not being treated with justice as well.
Yeah,
that's the hard. This is the hard part. That's the hard
I think
part.
we have a tendency to focus on sort of the edge cases. I remember, the last time we talked about this is the same sort of topic: is what's the right way to protest or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I reminded everybody that I went down to some of them, and I saw plenty of signs that were actually just quite humorous and quite irreverent. There was one that said, your Christian music is really crappy or whatever, something like that. Or it's your music is the real sin or something like that.
Yeah.
And
we can be very quirky and funny, and that's our best days.
And
right?
that's usually the sort of dominant. And let's not left the few examples of where that doesn't happen be the definition of what did occur.
You criticize my music, you will pay. So since we're talking about rallies turned violent. After years of legal battles, the city of Seattle's released the names of all the police officers who attended President Trump's infamous rally on January 6th, 2021. The officers had sued. These are Seattle police officers had sued to keep their names from being disclosed. But they dropped their case. This is the police officers union said that they were concerned this officers would face retaliation just for having unpopular political views in our blue city. But they dropped their case. The city disclosed their names and has now released interviews that the officers conducted that spring with Seattle's Office of Police Accountability. KUOW, our reporter Amy Radel, obtained audio of those interviews. So I'm going to play you some of it and we'll discuss, okay?
Sounds good.
All right. So these 6 officers say they attended at least part of Trump's speech over by the White House, where the one in which he falsely claimed the election had been stolen. Officer Alex Everett was photographed at the site of that speech, and his photo made it to social media. And you can hear here, it's a little hard to hear, I might have to repeat some of it, but Everett told investigators he has faced media attention and death threats.
I have spent hours scouring the internet for stupid websites that have your personal information. Just sit there and scrub this stuff off because my family's listed on there. My wife's listed on there. I have to worry about my family potentially being attacked from this.
He said, I've spent hours scouring the internet, stupid websites that have your personal information, sit there and scrub that stuff off because my family's listed on there, my wife's listed on there. I have to worry about my family potentially being attacked from this. Everett says that he and his wife are facing punishment for nothing more than wearing MAGA hats in public. Although some protesters described hearing explosions and smelling tear gas, Everett described walking toward the Capitol and seeing peaceful crowds waving flags and singing the national anthem, which drew a skeptical reaction from police accountability investigator Mark Gerba.
The reason why there's repeated questions is to try to reconcile how you can be that close and not know anything about what's going on. When the Capitol Police themselves have said that if you were a police officer and you were in that area, you would have absolutely had some understanding that there was problems.
The FBI would later provide a video clip in which that officer, Everett, and his wife, fellow officer Caitlin Rochelle, are actually seen with people scaling the Capitol walls behind them. The former police chief fired both of them back in 2021 for trespassing and undermining public trust. Investigators said that their findings against another officer, Sergeant Scotty Bach, were inconclusive. Bach told investigators he was in a restaurant when he got the emergency alert declaring a curfew that afternoon.
Take my food back to my hotel room and I watch in horror what's happening at the Capitol. I'm disgusted, and I did what I thought was right, was like book the next flight out. So I'm online like, I'm out of here. I do not want to be part of this. This is not what I'm here for.
Okay, so Sergeant Bach is still on the force. Investigators obtained video in which two more SPD officers, Detective Michael Settle and Sergeant Jacob Brisky, can be seen standing with former SPD officer Adley Shepard minutes before a group of Proud Boys breaks through barriers on the way to the Capitol. Sergeant Brisky told that investigator, Mark Gerba, that his group had turned the other way to find food. And Gerba said, that's surprising.
That group gets a lot larger, and then there shortly thereafter, it kind of explodes and does whatever it does there.
Sure.
From a people watching perspective, it seems like a lot of people would be drawn to just what is going on here type of scenario versus let's go to lunch.
Well, Sergeant Brisky responded to that, suggesting that he intentionally walked away.
Seeing those crowds, from a police officer's perspective, I don't want to be anywhere around those groups of people, to watch what they're doing or get caught in the middle of anything that they may or may not do.
Is that an off-duty police officer's perspective, that when you see something potentially illegal and dangerous, you walk away?
Well, I think what you have here is a variety of different responses to what was actually occurring. I'm not saying they all took the same flight, but when they all arrived, they all had some key choices to make. And you heard the one guy, he says, I decided to take the next flight out, and he did. Someone else, Brisky, says he doesn't want to be around them. There is a question. It's like, isn't it like on an airplane? Is there a doctor on board? So at a situation like that, there are some expectations that officers will help or at least not be part of anything. I sometimes liken this to being a journalist. And I know that we impose, maybe our place of work doesn't even tell you what you should do. But I will tell you that during the protests in 2020, I did not feel comfortable going to a protest as a citizen. If I was covering it, that's one thing. I felt really different, but I saw some journalists who thought, I am so riled up, I'm so motivated by this, that I get to go as a journalist and a protester. And I think that,
or in their minds, maybe I'm taking my journalist hat off, and I'm a private citizen right now.
I understand, and I just think it's about how we all conduct ourselves. I self-police maybe too much, but I do it because I don't want to be uncomfortable about it. That kind of same discomfort.
Yeah, certainly all the turmoil that occurred in 2020 had just happened. These were officers that were in Washington, D.C. They had plenty of experience knowing what a disturbance, an insurrection, what somewhere in there, what that would look like. So I don't really buy the idea that if they were close enough to see it, that would be one thing. The question is, obviously, you can show up to the rally, the initial rally that Donald Trump gave not far from the White House, but how close did you go to the Capitol? We clearly had two people that were fired for this that were very close. They saw walls being surmounted and things like that. And then you had a guy apparently that got Chipotle and went back to his hotel.
Mhm.
So it kind of runs the gamut. It seems like
Chipotle and chill.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely think there are some difference. Agree, like different responses to a different situation, right? Like I'm going to follow this crowd and I'm going to see where we're going is probably not the best kind of judgment for somebody whose job it is to make sure that there's peace and order in the world. And hey, this is not what I'm here for, and I'm heading on home. That is actually quite good judgment in my eyes. Like you want to go to a Trump rally, whatever. I guess that's your own deal.
It's not like they had they left their badges and guns at home. I don't know what they would have done about preventing an insurrection all by themselves anyway.
But that's been implied throughout these discussions that they should have known to begin helping.
How would they have helped?
I don't know. It seems to me like they need equipment to if that's the approach they're going to take.
Yeah, I think that police officers are trained in things like de-escalation and crime prevention, and that their job training is in things like picking up clues about what's happening around you and what the people are trying to do. And so I'm hoping that these officers aren't detectives, because it seems like they might have missed some key clues here. But then it's like, what are you supposed to do? And I think that your obligation, the oath that you take, is around serving and protecting people and upholding the peace and that sort of and the Constitution, and that is true. I would hope most police officers take that oath very, very, very seriously and are willing to step in and do kind of heroic things when they see something going wrong, even if they're not on duty. And I would hope that the people of SPD would take that to heart going forward around, like, when something's going wrong, you're the people that everybody looks to make it stop. And a police officer or one of the security guards at the Capitol was killed that day, right? So like another officer lost his life, and so I don't know that they could have done anything about that, but I think there's a basic expectation that when things are going wrong, that police officers on or off duty do something to make it stop.
I'm not sure if that's quite the message that it's in my mind that it sends as, if anything from this. I would think post everything coming out, don't be anywhere near the Capitol I think that it sort of sends that chill. And
so what you mean, don't go to a White House route, like on your own time?
I'm not First Amendment.
Yeah.
If you want to go to things, of course you can. But if you see that kind of activity and it's politically charged environment, and you're a public servant, in whatever your capacity, could be a journalist, whatever.
So if you're an off-duty cop, you shouldn't go at all. But if you do, you should try to de-escalate the insurrection.
That's really a mixed message if you think about it. Very confusing.
Yeah, the investigators, they went to their hotels, they got their key cards, they wanted to know what time they got back. I mean, think of how they dug into this. They went and looked at the receipts. Did they really go to this place? They verified their story. I don't know. That's how it comes off to me.
Yeah. So do you think anything more? I presume this is that they didn't. It's been years. I presume they didn't violate department policy by not in their plain clothes and lack of guns. They didn't wave and stop. I'm an off-duty police officer. Please don't do this. Whatever they were, whatever some people would have wanted them to do. It sounds like this is a settled matter. This is the end of it. Should anything more happen to these officers? Should their names even have been disclosed?
Well, that I think is the price they really paid, except for the two that lost their job. They didn't want their names released. And as your beginning clip on this segment, how this guy is really worried about the safety of his family. I mean, that to me does seem like the end of it, and they lost that. Their names are out there. But to me, we are at the end of that exact discussion.
We're so far beyond in this day and age. The president has pardoned many of, if not all, many of the people who participated, who were the perpetrators of this insurrection. It's just.
But he is intolerant of crime in the nation's capital.
So fun.
Okay, we're talking with, I'm Bill Radke. This is KUW's Week in Review, and we're moving through the week. What happened? What do we think of it? We've got Joni Balter here, a political analyst, Seattle Times, Josh Farley, transportation advocate Alex Hudson, and we're going to take another short break and come back, work through a little more of the week's news, and then turn either end of our mouths up to a smile as we do at the end of each program. Don't go away. We're not done yet.
Support for KUOW comes from King County Parks, presenting Chomp, Saturday, August 16th at Marymore Park. Open to the public and featuring music from Kim Deal and Suzalo, as well as activities for all ages, highlighting farms and restaurants using locally sourced food. More information at chomplocal.org.
Make KUOW the soundtrack to your weekday. Get briefed on your way out the door with the latest local, national, and international news from Morning Edition. Take lunch with Soundside, digging into issues shaping the Northwest. And catch up with all things considered on your commute home. Tune into 94.9 FM or listen anywhere on the KUOW app.
Hello there, if you're live streaming the show on YouTube, and hello if you're not, because you've got us on the radio or a podcast or on your KUOW app. I'm Bill Radke, here with Alex Hudson and Joni Balter and Josh Farley, analyzing, thinking through the week gone by for you. And the Democratic Washington Congressmember, Marie Gluesenkamp Perez, from the Vancouver area up to Thurston County, is up for re-election next year. And there's already a challenger. He's a Republican, but not a MAGA Republican. This is State Senator John Braun, the Republican leader of the Senate. He's been a senator for a dozen years, so since before Trump was president, but now he's got to live in Trump's world.
In a statement released by his campaign yesterday, Braun wrote that he was looking forward to, quote, working with President Trump on a positive agenda that gets America back on the right track.
That's KUOW reporter Noel Gasca. So, yes, Braun understandably would like Trump supporters to vote for him. Now, if you were Gluesenkamp Perez, what could you say to keep Trump fans from coming to the polls?
Representative Gluesenkamp Perez's campaign spokesperson released a statement after Braun's kickoff, saying the, quote, D.C. swamp has recruited Braun to run for Congress.
The D.C. swamp! So he's not a MAGA Republican, he's a conventional swamp Republican, and that's a bad thing if you love Trump. I'll ask you the same question I started the show with. What's at stake? What Braun versus, and I don't know who else is going to challenge, but so far, Gluesenkamp Perez and this Republican leader, what's at stake?
Yeah. What's at stake is that in Congress, everything is a vote count, right? It literally is at the bottom line, how many numbers you have in one category and how many numbers you have in another. And we want more. I want to see more people. I want more votes in the D category. I think that it's clear. It's not clear to me that it's in the bag for John Braun. Like, I don't know that this district actually wants a centrist Republican. I think the last time what they wanted was extremist Joe Kent. And
I didn't want.
Well, they put him up. The party put him up twice.
Yep.
So the party gets to decide who gets to go up, and then the voters make the ultimate call. And it was closer than it could have been.
Well, the party can't keep someone from running, but they can endorse. They endorsed Kent twice.
him,
Is that
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the third is a swingy district, but center right, if you think about recent votes. This is a real race for Marie Gluesenkamp Perez. She was a congressional darling for a minute or a year or something like that. She supposedly had the formula. But John Braun is a serious opponent. I believe that Gluesenkamp Perez has benefited from the fact that she twice ran against Joe Kent. He was, bridged too far for a lot of Republicans there. Braun is suburban Republican. He knows the state. That district knows him because he's been in Olympia for a while. It's very hard to be the candidate that she has been. She votes with the Democrats sometimes. She votes with the Republicans sometimes. And each time she's angering voters that would have been with her.
Yeah. I'm going to give you the last word, Josh, because we're steaming toward the end of the show. So Gluesenkamp Perez.
I'll just say this. I am optimistic, actually, for a good race of ideas. We don't often have that. Cook Political Report would call this, one of the 18 toss-ups in 435 seats. We are in a country of red states and blue states. This is going to be a purple battle in many ways, I think. John Braun is a pragmatic Republican, Senate Minority Leader currently in the legislature. And Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez is a unique public servant who I think this race is going to come down to how much it resonates with this, I think, localism that she makes the case that I represent my constituents the best way I know how. And that's, to me, is very refreshing in American politics today.
Mm-hmm.
What made you smile this week?
Well, you think you know everything about your city or your neighborhood. I live in South Seattle. And this summer I discovered the Rainier Beach Urban Farm and Wetlands. And I just have to tell you, it's 10 acres. It's within the city. Free community U-Pick, a farm stand, camps, school trips. I just couldn't believe this was here. Yeah. And as cool as it is.
I'm going to, is it okay?
Yes.
I'm going to take you on an environmental field trip too. As you probably know, Bill, bull kelp, the species of kelp we see, looks like whips on the water.
Yep.
Super important to, really foundational for like a scaffolding underwater for everything from orca whales to kelp crab that depend on it. I got to go out on a boat with the Puget Sound Restoration Fund. They're trying to regrow it. They are regrowing it. And it's fascinating. I love being around people who, in the turmoil of the world, climate change, Donald Trump, etc., everything else, their hearts and minds are focused on a hugely important problem. And I'm just grateful that I had the opportunity to do so.
Yeah.
Great. Well,
beautiful.
I will take us on a field trip to the beautiful and vibrant downtown Seattle,
Okay.
where at 3rd and Virginia, Cannonball Arts is opening in the former Bed Bath & Beyond today to create a wonderful place for contemporary local art to shine.
Yes, it's on my list to get there. Cannonball.
I hope you have a fun time.
Yeah. So that's the show. We got to go. This is my panel this week has been Seattle Times editorial writer Josh Farley, political analyst and contributing columnist Joni Balter, and local transportation advocate and a former city council candidate, Alex Hudson. Thanks for being Week in Review.
So fun. Thank you.
Check out
Thank you.
Amy Radl's excellent reporting on that January 6th situation on our app or at KUOW.org. I'm Bill Radke, thanking our producer Kevin Kniestedt and Kathy Faulkner on the board, and we're going to see you again next week.
Support for KUOW comes from Third Place Books. Mona Awad discusses her new book, We Love You, Bunny,